welcome to Bake to the Future, the show where we examine what is happening in the baking industry with a future-focused lens. I'm Haley Blumenreich.
And I'm Katie Jewell.
Today, we are bringing you a special episode with ABA Premium Allied member AMF Bakery Systems.
I sat down at ABA convention in March of 2022 with a leader in the baking industry, Ken Newsome, CEO of the Markel Food Group. Haley, can you explain a little bit about Markel?
Yes. So Markel is the parent company of ABA Premium Allied member AMF Bakery Systems. They build bakery equipment and complete bakery solutions around the world.
And in the discussion, it was really nice to get to know Ken. I had never really talked to him before. The pandemic has kind of taken away a lot of chances for us to meet up with our members. And it was really interesting getting to know him and how he got into the baking industry, how he's found his career path here, and his passions about innovation and finding new opportunities. And it was also interesting to hear about their challenges during the past few years, kind of how they're dealing with the current supply chain issues, and also looking ahead to IBIE 2022. I'm really excited to see what their booth ends up looking like, but it was really nice to talk to him about that. So let's get into it.
As we get started, I always like to start our interviews with the hardball question.
Okay.
So, and I did not prep you ahead of time. What's your favorite baked good?
Oh, wow. I guess I'd have to say a brownie. Yeah, brownie with walnuts.
Okay, that was going to be my follow-up.
Yeah.
Is nuts or no nuts?
Yeah, brownie with walnuts.
Okay, what's the reasoning for that?
I'm a chocolate guy and I'm a nut guy. And so I guess that's the best combination of chocolate and nuts in a baked product.
So this is a getting to know you sort of interview. Can you talk to me, what brought you to the baking industry? Maybe back up a little bit and tell us about your growth and where you are today, but what got you here?
Well, like a lot of people, it was a combination of, crazy circumstances and good fortune. When I graduated from business school in 1986, my goal was specifically to buy and build a manufacturing company centered in Richmond, Virginia. And
that's a very specific goal.
That's why it's kind of odd, because I'd grown up in Virginia. And this was a time in the 80s that, when American manufacturing was kind of, on the downside. The Japanese were beating us around the world. So it was an element of how do we build a great industrial company. And since I was from Virginia and Richmond's the capital, I thought that'd be a great place to build a career. We went to our 10th business school reunion. And I was doing the where am I now versus where I wanted to be 10 years before. And I was in the medical business down in Atlanta. And I told my wife, I said, if anything were possible, we'd move back to Richmond, Virginia, and I'd put together a group of investors and we'd buy a manufacturing company. But I literally followed up by saying, but that's not possible. So we'll just keep our head down and see what happens. And it was about 2 weeks later, I got a call from a recruiter about being the president of AMF Bakery Systems in Richmond, Virginia. So I followed up on the call and found out through that process that the company was actually for sale. And I knew the investment banker that was hired to sell it. And I called him and I said, how do I buy this company? And the funny part of it was he asked me, he said, well, Ken, what do you know about the baking industry or the food business? And I said, nothing. And he said, well, what about this kind of manufacturing capital equipment? What kind of experience do you have in that? And I said, well, none.
Sounds like a perfect fit.
That's exactly what he said. He asked me, followed up, he said, well, do you have any money? And I said, not really. And he said, I guess you're just the guy we're looking for. And literally, crazy things happened. And about 6 months later, we found a group of local investors and put together a small deal and bought the company.
So you're in your mid-30s at this point.
Just turned 37.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then you transition from the medical industry quickly into the baking equipment manufacturing industry.
Right.
Okay, so this is, now we're looking at 1997-ish.
Correct, 1997.
Right? So what happens then? Because I know that now you are over many companies, of which that is one.
Right.
So kind of walk through how that all shook out, maybe the elevator pitch version, because it's, the 1997 to today has been more than, I guess it's 25 years?
Yeah, 25 years.
So 25 years. So maybe talk through the last 25 years and how things rolled into the next.
Well, our hypothesis coming in was that consolidation typically follows consolidation. And so when you looked at bakers and the baking side of the business, that was really the beginning of consolidation. And as you go from an industry that is based principally on family businesses, where they have their group of suppliers that they use to build their bakeries, to more professional organizations, corporate engineering, you find that people want more and more integrated solutions. And so we began with a very explicit goal of building the first end-to-end solution provider on the soft bread and rolls. And that's really what AMF Bakery Systems was all about. And we made the original AMF deal was right at the end of '96. We bought Camtech in '97, we bought ETMW in '98, we bought Pulver in '99, we bought Convey in 2000. It then went a period of time before we bought BakeTech in 2011, and that really finished the original vision in terms of creating AMF Bakery Systems as the end-to-end solutions provider on the soft bread and rolls. Well, what we realized as we went along was that there are a lot of other baked goods than soft bread and rolls. And that's why in 2012, we made our two real strategic acquisitions. One was Trump, which is sheeting technology, moving us into the artisan breads, pastries, pizzas, pies, those kinds of things. And then Reading Bakery Systems, which moved us into the baked snacks, the cookies, crackers, and baked snacks. And that's when we created the Markel Food Group, because in 2005, Markel came in and replaced all the original outside investors. Okay. And so that's really what provided us the capital to accelerate our growth. And with Trump and with Reading and with another company called Solburn that's not in the baked business, that's when we created the Markel Food Group. So I'm now technically the CEO of the Markel Food Group. We have 3 operating companies under us in terms of AMF Bakery Systems, Reading Bakery Systems, and Solburn. But the reality of AMF is that we combined Trump into AMF, and AMF is really run very much like 3 companies. The Americas, which is the original AMF as it was constructed, AMF Europe, Middle East, Africa, and that's building off of Trump. That's the entire AMF portfolio and support in that region. And then we have AMF China, which was a business that we stood up in China that now is the largest operation in China of any U.S. or European baking equipment manufacturing company. And we're really growing that to be another very independent, standalone business, a leader in China, but also a place that we export around the world.
What are some of the things that are happening then? You said, it's a leader in China, but also for the world. What sort of things are happening there that are, maybe a little bit more forward-leaning than other places?
Well, the biggest thing is if you can compete in China from a cost point of view, you're going to be able to compete around the world. And so we are a fully Chinese company. It's completely owned by us. They're all our people. But there is a level of innovation and a level of speed that happens in China that is unmatched around the world. If you just look from a holistic macroeconomic point of view, look at what that nation has done in the last 30 or 40 years. And there is just a speed of change and a speed of adopting new ideas that we're just really proud of the team that we have over there. And what we do is we take the core technology from AMF, Trump, Reading, and then we take it and try to amend it to a smaller baker. AMF, Reading, these are large bakers, big throughputs. We take that technology and downsize it and simplify it, and then we sell it not only in China, but we ship it all around the world.
And so when you're talking about size and speed, are you talking about the ability to move products through the line more quickly?
Yeah, just rate.
Okay.
12,000 buns an hour, 24,000 buns an hour.
That's what's basic. China's.
Yeah, well, they would be at the lower rates. They would be at the lower rates versus the high-speed AMF rates. You're talking well over 1,000 buns a minute. So we don't need those rates in developing markets all around the world.
1,000 buns a minute? 2,000 buns a minute?
1,000 buns a minute.
Just the scale of the baking industry has always blown my mind.
Yeah.
Just having, just when you think about it, and you go into bakeries and you see everything happening, and it's, constant motion. It's just wild to me.
It's crazy.
And so when we're talking about China and how kind of forward it is, and it's, it sounds like that's kind of like the fast moving place. How has COVID over the last few years and kind of the slowdown of the global supply chain economies, things have just been weird the last 2 years.
That's to put it mildly.
Right? So kind of what was it like before COVID, and what changed over the last few years then, not only in China, but I guess if we're looking globally, but I want to talk about China just because it sounds like that's kind of like the forward-leaning, bleeding edge sort of technologies that your company is implementing and developing new products. What has changed?
Well, that is a large question. First of all, just to clarify, all of our businesses all around the world try to be at the leading edge. So it's not just in China. The real opportunity we have in China is to take the technologies from around the world and build it on a platform that runs at a lower rate that we're then able to export around the world because of our cost advantages. If you take this time 2 years ago, it has been crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis, and we went from the early days of COVID wondering how many weeks can we go from a cash flow point of view without getting another order. Literally, that's what we were concerned about, because if you look at our order rate, we're always paying attention to what's the interest from customers and what are we expecting as orders in the next 90 days. That's our short-term window. That literally fell by 80% in the month of April of 2020. 80%. And so we're thinking that, the world is going to end in terms of nobody's going to buy anything for years in terms of what we were facing. And so that was the first issue. And fortunately, because of Markel, we don't have debt. And so we had plenty of cash. We could have gone for a very long period of time. But the point is, that's what our focus was counting the pennies to understand how we're going to pay the bills without any orders. And then the next thing you know, it's, oh my gosh, how are we going to handle this business? Because the flow of opportunities, the flow of orders, since about 3 or 4 months into the pandemic has just been crazy. And I think part of it is in changing eating habits. People are eating from home, bigger retail opportunities. I think part of it is, that bakers are looking at the low interest rates and knew that those weren't going to last forever. So how do we make sure we get as much cheap money as possible? And so there's just been an explosion in our industry in terms of demand for equipment. You then layer on top of that the supply chain issues in general that have affected our industry. You then lay on it the situation in Ukraine. The baking industry talks a lot about wheat and what does that do with wheat? Well, what folks also don't realize is that Ukraine is also the capital of nickel, and nickel is for stainless steel. And stainless steel is critical for our machines. And so now the question in Europe is, it's not what price for stainless steel are we going to pay, it's are we going to be able to get stainless steel as we get into the summer months? And so it just seems like every day it is a new issue. Layer on top of that the people issues, and just, good people who end up leaving because they just can't take the pressure anymore, they can't take the stress anymore. And so it seems as if every day brings some new little challenge. And, but you fight through it. And as I said, where we're fortunate is because of our relationship with Markel. If we don't have debt, we're not some private equity company that not only has a lot of debt, but the issue is, we want to sell in 3 years. So we're not for sale. We're never for sale. Our time frame is forever. So when you have a forever time frame, and you have no debt, your ability to weather these storms is just a whole lot greater, because you don't have to worry about paying the bills the way a lot of people do.
That's also weathering the financial storms. I think you just laid out a bunch of dire situations, and basically it sounds like all inputs are, very stressful right now, and certainly it's
right. Even the orders are stressful because of how many there are.
Right, and so it's a weird spot to be in, but it's hard to fulfill those orders in a way that you're probably used to. So as a leader, then you listed off these dire issues. As a leader, how do you kind of keep people motivated to be positive, or do you care? Like, how do you help your people through this? Because how many employees kind of across the board are there? 900
900 all around the world.
Markel, under the whole thing.
Under Markel Food Group, we have 900 people.
Okay, so how do you keep these nearly 1,000 people motivated and moving when everybody, and certainly you as a leader, you have it the hardest, no offense, but you're getting knocked from every angle, and how do you keep everybody trying to move forward in a positive way? Well,
I mean, the biggest thing is to continue to reinforce the fact that we're going to be okay. And that's one of the nice things about being part of our organization. We're going to be okay. Nobody needs to worry that the company is going anywhere, because our company is not going anywhere, because we're not going anywhere, our parents not going anywhere. We are beyond financially sound. And so there's that level of security in terms of, my situation. The other thing is that the reality is everybody works locally. And it's not just locally in a building, it's locally within a building. And so really it is about the local leadership and the local teams. And one of the great things we have, we just did a worldwide engagement survey, is our local managers are really good. We're just very, very blessed that this assembly manager here, or that service manager there, or that purchasing manager there are really, really good managers, and they have a very good relationship with their people. Because if you think we're all tribal, we're tribal beings, right? That's that man by nature is tribal. I think that's the reason if you look at ABA and why everybody's all excited about being at ABA, because we're back together again. Our pack is back together again. And so in every building, there's an element of team in the building, but even within the building, you have the local departments. And so we just really fortunately have great managers who communicate with the folks, because so much of it is when you go into your office or into your assembly area or into your whatever, do you feel like you're part of a winning team? And so as much as anything, that's what we try to remind folks of. You're on a winning team, and we have a noble purpose in what we're doing, and we're going to be fine.
What's that purpose?
Better food, better lives. We're about providing better food around the world, higher quality, lower cost food products, and improving the lives of everyone that we touch, whether it's the people who buy our products, whether it's the people who work in our companies, whether it's the neighborhoods, whatever. We want people who engage with our company to be better off because they dealt with us.
Yeah, that's a fantastic North Star.
And again, it comes when you have the ability to think that way, is when you aren't worried about a lot of extraneous things, like a lot of companies do in terms of, again, debt and selling and all those things. It's about doing the right thing for our people, so they do the right thing for our customers over long periods of time.
So I have a few future-focused questions. One is there technologies or things that changed during COVID that, with AR, VR, like kind of what are trying to look for some silver linings through this whole last 2-year fiasco that, we're still not done yet.
And we don't know what's coming next, right?
Right. So what are some silver linings or some things that have been kind of moved along the timeline more quickly than if the pandemic hadn't happened?
Well, when you have a large, complex organization like we do, and when you have customers all around the world like we do, teams, as much as everyone has teams fatigue, and you can only take so much of these back-to-back-to-back teams meetings, the reality is being able to see people that you're talking to around the world makes a huge difference. And that's not only internally, but that's even with customers, because throughout this, there have been customers I've reached out to for a 15-minute phone call that I never would have flown, hours to see the person for a 15-minute phone call. And so it just made us closer from that point of view, relationally. I do think that there's a balance to that. because we all get Teams headaches. But I do think that that's a technology that helps us. If you then look in terms of baking, is this whole issue of remote, and this is Teams related, remote support is a critical. That's a critical next step, because the reality is you can't put people on airplanes and fly them all around the world. It's expensive. Now you have issues with quarantine and all of those things. And I think the good news, with air quotes, is that if you look at the evolution of controls is moving into that in terms of the controls of the machine. And it's this whole notion of a digital twin, meaning how do I have an electronic picture of what's going on physically with my machine? There's the physical machine operating, and then there is the electronic picture of it. Well, once I have that electronic twin, whether I'm standing there at the machine, whether I'm corporate 100 miles away, whether I'm in one of our businesses, one of our units 1,000 miles away, we now have greater opportunity to look at the machine, monitor the machine, to try to make sure that we're keeping it running. And then again, VR people have been able to use VR to do some things. We've done startups with FaceTime. We've literally started up an entire line with South Africa with FaceTime. So it's forced us to think differently and forced customers to think differently. And I think that's going to be part of the technical change that we see, that we're able to do more without being physically in the building.
And then another future question. And you just talked a lot about robots and automation, and probably using lots of sensors to be able to feel like to assess situations as if you were in the ground. You're involved heavily with IBIE, so talk to me a little bit about what you're on the committee.
Mm-hmm. Right, I'm on the IBIE committee.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, why? That's extra work. You already have a day job.
Well, because if you think about the place where on the Americas, side, vertically, the center of where we gather as an industry is IBIE, and we have been the largest exhibitor in that show for many, many seasons. It's a big event for us. It's a big event for our industry, and as a company that considers itself one of the leaders in the industry, we want a place at the table when we have events for the industry. And so therefore it's important.
What are you most excited about for this year's IBIE in particular?
Well, the first thing I'm most excited about is being together with customers, because it's been tough to get in front of customers. And it's one thing to maintain relationships over Teams. It's very, very difficult to build them over Teams. It's hard to demonstrate what machines do. Just with videos, it's so much easier to see. So I just think the fact that we're together is positive. Also, from a timing point of view, we're very fortunate with IBIE in terms of the timing of this, because if you look the 3-year show cycle, Interpack and IBIE are the other two, and both of those were canceled. And so I think that if there was ever a time of pent-up demand for people to get out and see, this is a time to do that. Now, having said that, there's still pretty significant travel restrictions. It's going to be very difficult for our Asian customers to make this trip because of the quarantine. When they go back, it's just not worth it to spend 3 weeks in a hotel. And so I don't know. I think that'll affect some of the turnout, but I think we're going to find that there's an energy and intensity that we've not seen in the past. I think what's interesting is, as a rule, the booths are bigger, so people are going to be bringing more things, showing more things. So I think there'll be a lot more energy. I think if you look at our industry, there's all this talk about robots, and if you think about it, vision and robots have been around for a long time. But I think that we're going to see an acceleration in that, because vision is critical for AI. Basically, what do humans do when they operate machines? Well, they look at something and make a judgment and make an adjustment. Well, how do you use vision and intelligence and algorithms to make the adjustment so that the machine self-adjusts instead of having a person to be there? And then on the robotics side, let's face it, a job where you spend all day, every day, picking up a cupcake and putting it into a box or something, that's not the kind of thing you can do for hours on end. It's certainly not going to be something that someone's going to necessarily be excited about over long periods of time. It's not a very engaging job. And so again, that's something that the industry is looking at, that COVID is accelerating. And part of it is you can't get people to come in to do those jobs. But even if you could, you no longer want people standing shoulder to shoulder doing those kinds of things, just because we never know when the next COVID is going to come along. And so I think you're going to see a lot of vision, a lot of self-adjusting machines. You're going to see a lot of robotics. And this whole issue of remote monitoring and remote support, I think you're going to see that, because those are trends that COVID really has accelerated. And so that's what we'll see.
And do you have any tips for people going to IBIE, shopping the floor? I mean, besides going to stop by the booth,
Yes.
of course, but it's such a massive show. I'm just trying to think. I've been to IBIE once, and then this will be a whole new experience. I don't know if you've seen the West Hall, but do you have any tips for people before they go to think about?
I think the biggest thing is plan ahead. Just plan ahead, because if you show up there and you're just going to figure it out, I think it's very, very easy to get overwhelmed. And so, use the website, use the media guides, understand the way the building is set up and how you can see what you want to see. If there are specific technologies, make appointments, set up times, because if not, you run the risk that when you get there, the people that are particular for you are taken or booked or whatever. So it really is plan ahead and make sure you allow yourself enough time to see all the things, because there's going to be a lot to see at IBIE.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just think that if you look at our industry, we are extraordinarily fortunate, because from a global perspective, assuming we don't have a pandemic that does a lot more damage than COVID, or assuming we don't have a war that does more damage than we see now in Europe, and the crazy things is we didn't even dream of those in January of 2020, right? So who knows what could happen, but barring those kinds of crazy events, the reality is the population of the world is growing, and there's going to be more people on the planet next year than this year. And with technology, they're going to be smarter than they were the year before. And because they're smarter, they're going to create more opportunities, and they're going to create more jobs, and there's going to be more commerce, and that's going to create more wealth. And so as we get more and more people around the world who have more and more disposable income, they're going to do what humans have done since the beginning of time. And after you take care of basic needs of shelter, food and drink, bread and wine, that has been the nature of man really since the beginning of time, that we like to join with friends, have food and have drink, and baked products are at virtually every meal, every snack, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And so as an industry, on the capital side, bakers don't necessarily need to buy machines every year, but over the long arc of time, they need machines. But from an industry point of view, from a baker's point of view, we're in a great, great place globally. Now, again, different markets, different segments, different challenges. But in our particular case, we're all around the world, supporting every region in the world. And so I'm very, very bullish over the long term about our company.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Let us know what you thought of the show by emailing hello@americanbakers.org or leave us a voicemail at baketothefuture.org. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts: Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, or Ghana.